welcome to the Poverty Truth Network chat show. I'm Andrew, and as part of this series, I'm meeting with commissioners from around the UK to find out a little bit about their commission, hear some of the wisdom from their experiences, and think together about what the consequences might mean for the network as a whole. Today I'm with Dusty, Alex, Suzanne and Caroline from the Morecambe Bay Poverty Truth Commission. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
It's good to have you all here. Now, we are asking all our guests to bring along an item that they simply could not live without. So I'm going to come to you first, Dusty.
Well, I was stuck between three things, but I think I'm probably going to have to go with my phone in the end. After years of cursing technology and of thinking a phone is only for making a phone call on, it's now permanently glued to my side, and I'm on half the apps I'd said I'd never download, like WhatsApp and things like that. But it is, I've learned to rely on it for all sorts of things. So
excellent, you're hooked to your phone. Caroline, how about you? What have you brought along, and tell us a bit about yourself as well.
Right. Yeah, I'm a city councillor in Lancaster, and my portfolio responsibility is housing. What I've brought along is my hot water bottle. It's very snazzy cover that a friend of mine knitted, crocheted for me. And I couldn't live without that, because it doesn't matter in general how warm it is, my feet are cold, and so I can't get to sleep. So I thought you'd like to see the secret of a good sleep is a nice furry hot water bottle.
With a beautifully designed cover.
Yeah.
Excellent. Suzanne.
I'm Suzanne. I'm Deputy Director for Communities and Environment at the City Council, which is really the majority of the frontline services that we deliver to communities and people are in that directorate. So I've brought my decaffeinated Earl Grey tea bags, because I love Earl Grey tea. I love all different types of Earl Grey tea from lots of tea shops. I've been drinking that much of it in lockdown that I decided I had to go to decaf, or otherwise I would have been even more wired. So I've switched to decaffeinated Earl Grey, and I queue up in Marks and Spencer's to be able to get this because it's brilliant.
Excellent, excellent. And finally, Alex.
I'm Alex. I work at a supported housing project for people with drug and alcohol misuse issues. I brought along my earphones, which I generally cannot live without, because music is a massive part of my life. And I can put these in my ears. I can put these in my ears and sit in the middle of Disneyland and make myself miserable if I wish. And I can sit in the most miserable place in the world and put them in my ear and make myself happy.
Now, the Morecambe Bay Poverty Truth Commission, I believe, launched in 2018, the summer of 2018. So coming into this new year, in 2020, you were about to finish your commission, I believe. And then, of course, we've all been in lockdown. Dusty, do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the things that over this last couple of years that the Commission has been looking at?
Fortunately, we've been very lucky with the civic commissioners we've had, in that we've had a wide variety of them. And we've been able to explore all sorts of different things, but we were fortunate to have somebody from United Utilities who didn't really want to be there. He had an absolutely massive turnaround after our first couple of meetings, and has been a great ambassador, both while he's been with us, but also back to the head office at United Utilities. Several members of on the community commissioner's side got invited to the head office down at Warrington. So we went and had a very fruitful conversation with them about, that they weren't really doing anything until people ended up in debt, and that they could be doing a lot more to prevent people ending up in debt. And one of the things that they've they launched after that meeting was a 2-month deferment payment period for anybody applying for universal credit, because as you know, it never takes a few, a couple of weeks. It's always a couple of months. So that was basically to stop people ending up in debt while they were waiting for the payments to come through, or worrying to find the actual United Utilities payments during that period. And since then, they've done a lot of work on with community groups about preventing debt, and have brought in a number of schemes, which, when you consider the amount of customers United Utilities have, which is 8 million, has been absolute massive success story for the whole of the Morecambe Bay PTC.
That's fantastic, isn't it? A kind of business person that initially was a bit skeptical about the commission, kind of really not just only getting it, but realizing that they were positioned to be able to make some significant difference for an awful lot of people. Suzanne, can you tell us a bit about what it was like being a part of the commission, and how you managed to kind of take some of the things that you were learning there and bring them into your workplace?
Probably by about meeting 2, and Dusty will remember this conversation, I was listening to what the commission was about, how they tried to affect change, what the hopes and dreams were for people, and how we'd make a difference to people's lives. And it just seemed like a mammoth task. And at the end of the meeting, I was stood outside and was saying goodbye to Dusty, and I just said, I'm really nervous and really worried about being on this Poverty Truth Commission, because I'm just one small cog in a massive wheel at the council, and I just don't know whether I'm going to be able to make any difference whatsoever. And I was a little bit frustrated as well by the pace over the sort of following 3 or 4 months of how the commission was moving, and I felt it was kind of lots of talking and not much action. But within a few more months, I kind of look back now and think that was so incredibly important, and I'll probably talk about that a bit later when we come to words of wisdom. A year into the commission, I arranged for some of the community commissioners to come in and talk to members of the staff working on the front line. So we had 3 different meetings. We had people from housing, homelessness, our council housing section, customer services, we had environmental health officers, a whole range of people. And there were probably altogether, there must have been 75, 80 people that the community commissioners spoke to. And every meeting was different, but they were, absolutely fantastic, really encouraging meetings where the community commissioners told their stories. And you could literally hear a pin drop in the room when the staff were listening to those stories. There were members of staff with tears running down their eyes, down the faces, and there were people, as a result of that, starting to open up a little bit and share some of their stories. But the feedback overwhelmingly was brilliant. I've never had so many emails, following something like that from people, or phone calls, or being stopped in the corridor saying that was one of the best kind of training courses, if you like. And as a result of that, I mean, I've definitely noticed a change in how people deal with individuals and communities. We've heard anecdotal stories, which we like to think are as a result of those meetings, where somebody has really gone the extra mile for somebody. They've treated that person with absolute empathy and kindness, which probably wasn't there before. They've taken a step back and really thought about, that person in their shoes, and, they've got a deeper understanding now of why some people end up like they are, and that whole judgment side of things has definitely changed. And that led on to then rewording some of our letters just to make them a bit less frightening and a bit kinder. So some really big impacts, particularly in our directorate that delivers most of the frontline services. And there's a long way to go yet, but made a good start.
Caroline, obviously working as a member within the council, How have you seen that begin to be played out in the way that the council works, and what are some of the things that you've been involved in as a direct result of the commission that maybe you wouldn't have been if you hadn't been a part of it?
I got the housing portfolio about just over a year ago, and homelessness obviously a big area of it. And I think the big thing that happened was that my sense of understanding of people who are homeless just began to increase. And I kind of knew that the experience was out there because there were people on Poverty Truth Commission who I knew had been homeless. So actually since COVID, when everybody who was homeless was brought in, and actually officers were really keen to do that well before the government was, and I think that's part of the showing a change in attitude. But then once we'd done that, it was like, we don't want these people ever to go out of being housed again. And that was that at that point, it was kind of like, who can help us? And so I turned to, well, Alex, Dusty, and sort of, I was like, you can help. And it was the relationships, I think, and then they brought other people in with the relationships they had. And we now got this group that really sees things differently and has changed the whole of our views. But also, as someone said, we've got a general housing advisory, a homelessness advisory group, but someone said, well, when the people with lived experience talk, then you got to listen to them. Whereas, if it's me, well, so it's really good. They've got an authority which has changed the way we think. And the group, the general homelessness group, has people in it from business, from outside the council, from charities, and everybody has changed their views, and they've really come together. And I think that's because they've been inspired by the lived experience group. And it's interesting that people said to me from other cabinet members on the council, how is it you can get your homelessness advisory group to work so closely together? And I think to themselves, well, the secret is the Poverty Truth Commission, because so many people, because the core of it is the Poverty Truth Commission and the relationships we made. One lovely thing is one of the officers who she's in charge of homelessness, she said to the homelessness advisory group that she'd never felt supported by people outside of the council before, and she'd never understood that we're on the same page about homelessness.
Alex, you've been a part of that group. I'm interested, for somebody has that lived experience, what it was like to be a part of that, and what do you think about some of the achievements that you've been able to make through that group?
Through my work with Alcliffe House in Lancaster, who rehouse complex needs homeless people, and through a lot of research that we did as a Poverty Truth Commission around different homelessness supported housing projects in Lancaster, rehabs and detoxes, we found that one of the massive problems was the revolving door problem, where we can rehouse people, but they end up going in that revolving door and coming around the other end. And again, through lived experience and knowledge of this, for me, it was, yes, a lot of people go on about they need this floating support, they need the bills paying, you need to get to these important appointments, but you can give somebody that's homeless all that, and it still won't take away the feeling every time they step outside their door, that feeling of being ostracized, not feeling part of the community, and walking around with that knot in their stomach, because everybody, it's like homeless written across the forehead, which is very similar to my kind of experience when I came out of rehab. I thought I had addict written across my forehead kind of thing. I thought I had nothing to offer anybody, and nobody would want to hold a conversation with me. So the only way, one of the finest ways to sort of beat that, and we had the discussion around that, was to just have somebody to befriend these people, somebody to knock on the door and have a coffee with them without the badge on. No badge on, not about writing forms, not about appointments, not about any kind of council issues or anything like that. It's not about bill paying, it's just about somebody to go and have a coffee with them, take them out for a coffee, and introduce them into society, a society that feels extremely scary when you've lived in that different way all your life. So from that idea, me and Dusty, we got together, we put it out to the homelessness prevention group that Caroline was talking about, and said, what do you think of this? And everybody kind of fell in love with it. People offered help from all angles. What we did was we got right down to the grassroots and basically got around every single homelessness group, every single supported housing project. And from that, we now have a funding bid to create a paid facilitator, somebody that's paid to facilitate volunteers with lived experience of homelessness, addiction, to look after these volunteers and send them out to people's houses that have just been rehoused, so they can do the job that I was just kind of mentioning.
That's fantastic to hear the work of just one of those groups. One of the things I love about Poverty Truth and the privilege of networking with all the different commissions around the country is, even though the kind of process is very similar, it goes in different directions in different places, because the commissioners are a different group of commissioners, the different people involved. Dusty, I know that you've worked with one particular community because there were people who were community commissioners who were a part of that community. Do you want to talk to us a bit about that and about what's kind of emerged there?
Yeah, we were very fortunate in the early stages to get a lady that represents traveller communities, Gypsy and Roma communities. And she then managed to get us 2 community commissioners from a particular site in Morecambe. Well, it's halfway between Lancaster and Morecambe, who had a lot of concerns at the time about the future of their site, which was owned by the county council. But the county council were looking to offload it, and they were really worried about what's happened in other parts of the country where unscrupulous landlords have taken over. Once we actually got the commission going, because of people like Suzanne and Caroline, we managed to get the city council to start considering, would it be the right thing to do for them to take over the site?
Coinciding with actually speaking to Marie and Chrissy and Imogen at the meetings, we started to think, perhaps the city council could take this on. The right thing to do, the human thing to do would be to look after our residents and take this on.
And when it came to the final council meeting where I had to present the report and answer questions, there was some pretty vocal opposition and some people who spoke in ways we would much rather they didn't speak. I mean, it wasn't outrageous, but I think it hurt us. And Chrissy and Marie were sitting at the back there with a number of other people from the PTC. And I think the wonderful thing was that, as it went towards the vote, they sat there with their hands, holding hands, waiting for the vote. And then, of course, the vote came out and it was passed that we would buy it. And it was just a wonderful moment, when you won't forget. I will never forget that moment.
From my point of view, if I hadn't have been on the Poverty Truth, I probably wouldn't have fought so hard for it. It's only because I, kind of got a real understanding of the importance of that site to the people that are on that site, and absolute watching them, how distraught and upset they were at the thought of that site being sold. You can't fail to be moved by that. And if you think, if we could do something that produces a real positive outcome for a group of people who are our residents, they live in our district, they use our facilities, they contribute. If we can't do that, then it's a poor show in my view. So yeah, we got there in the end.
The first picture at the top explains the feelings that you go through once you end up in poverty. And how maybe this little bit here, making a difference, you can be the person out here leading people. Just one person needs to make a difference. And
my artwork's basically about time, and it's about the time that I was given to log on to computers and get onto my universal credit claim. This just represents the state in my head at the time.
This picture represents some of the feelings and anxieties which have become all too familiar to me. I'm just constantly at the behest of the benefit system, and my income has halved in the last year.
And the fatigue, the anxiety that comes with the poverty that I've experienced, the fear that I may lose my home.
Poverty is exclusion from human needs such as health, education, and emotional and mental peace. It is exclusion from a purposeful future.
I'm aware that we've talked a lot about what you've achieved, and it is truly extraordinary what you've done in the last couple of years. But I guess there's always those things that you wish you could have done as well. And sometimes that's because actually the levers of change aren't in the locality, they're beyond. If there was one thing that you'd like a kind of network of Poverty Truth Commissions to consider and to look at, what might that be?
I think, I don't know whether this is fair, but I think as a commission, we were lucky in having a traveller group as part of our group. Otherwise, we would not have had the kind of diversity I felt that we should have. And I think it's really difficult to achieve that understanding of the lives of people who are very poor in our society. We didn't manage to connect with the refugee group in Lancaster, and so my kind of wish is that for that a bit more connection with the diversity of those who are living in poverty.
Yeah, you might have seen my head shaking because Caroline's just stolen mine.
Oh.
Well, me and Andrew were talking about it the other day, so I'm going to stick to the same one. And it has come at a time when obviously I'm thinking more about it than I should think about it. But I've been thinking a lot lately about myself, and basically I would like it to be more diverse around ethnic minorities, black people. I'd like to be able to get into the rural side of things. So exactly what Caroline said, really.
Just thinking beyond Morecambe Bay, is there any issue that you'd like the network to pick up?
My big disappointment, and it was one of the things that everybody wanted to come out on the launch, was things about to do with the DWP and how disenfranchised everybody was, and how everything was going online and you didn't have the personal contact anymore. And because it is government run and it's national, I think it's definitely something that we need to take forward nationally, because I think the changes, and I know West Cheshire have had success with the pledge and things like that, but it's not fundamentally changing anything, and unfortunately we didn't get anywhere with that, and I think that's going to have to be done at a national level.
Thanks, Dusty. Suzanne, how about you?
I think it's partly something that COVID has highlighted, and that's the whole area of inequalities. And so we know that COVID's impacted most on people from the BAME community, but also people who live in areas of deprivation and poverty. So I think there's, the Poverty Truth Commission's strapline, nothing about us is for us, without us is great. I would like to see a little bit more weaving in an emphasis on, so what's the result of people living in poverty then? Inequalities are getting worse. We've not made one jot of difference in reducing inequalities in the last 10 years, and Professor Marmot's report showed that. So I think a good kind of outcome for the national network is to really push the it's terrible that people are experiencing what they're experiencing, but it's a disgrace that is resulting in some people living 10 years less than other people, or living fewer healthy years than other people. So I think a bit more weaving in the inequalities debate and discussion would be helpful.
There'll be lots of people from different Poverty Truth Commissions around the country watching this. What one bit of wisdom would you want to pass on to them?
So mine's a kind of a personal one. Mine will be the fact that I've learned that whatever service that I've had to deal with out here in my journey of recovery, all human beings have their own issues and problems and hurdles. And that kind of just took a whole lot of unhealthy resentment out of me and empowered me to move forward a lot healthier in my life.
I guess I've learned this a bit from watching other people. I'm a bit cautious myself, but I think my words of wisdom are, if it feels daring, if it feels risky, and if your stomach falls away at the thought of what you're about to do or say, well, do it.
Brilliant. I think you're getting a lot of nods around the screen on that one. Dusty, how about you?
Well, as per normal, I've got 2 words of wisdom. One is, always the launch is very much about your story, but when you get into the actual commission itself, yes, use your story, but remember that you are representing a lot of people through the Poverty Truth Commission and not just your own particular agenda. And my second one, and I think this is really important, is if you put the hard work in with the relationships in the first place, then you will not only achieve a lot more, but you will end up with some surprising, genuine friendships at the end of it.
Yeah, and I suppose mine's quite similar to Dusty's second one, and it's a little bit for the civic commissioners, and that's just a plea really to really make the time in your busy schedules to forge those relationships and meet up with people over a cup of tea or coffee, away from an office environment. Take time to ask and really listen to people's stories, start to get to know them. And it is difficult at the start, it's not easy to do, but to do that with as many different community commissioners as you can, because like Dusty says, it will pay dividends in the end to what you can achieve together, because the bedrock of all the poverty truths in Morecambe Bay anyway is all about relationships.
I'm sure everybody would want to thank Dusty, Suzanne, Alex and Caroline for sharing your stories this afternoon. It's been truly inspiring to hear everything that you achieved. But for now, thank you very much and goodbye.
Bye everyone. Bye everyone.